Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Q2 North Suburban Chicago Tableau user group meeting. As you can see, we have a new home screen here, a new icon. We'll chat about that in a moment. But first, let's take a look at our agenda for the day. We're going to start off with myself. I'm Alex Stephen Pataki, and I'm just kicking off the meeting today. I'm a member of the leadership team for this user group, and Yenny as well, who you can see on the screen, is also a member of that leadership team group. The first presentation we have today is on row-level security with Tableau by Eric, and he's going to walk us through that. Next up, we've got Paul, and he's going to go through what's new in 2021.1. Everything, including the Einstein, but not a whole lot of the Einstein, because the next session is Geoff, and Geoff's going to dig hardcore into the Einstein Discovery features that are in 2021.1, which is a great big feature being added in this release. Really nice stuff. And then at the end of it, we'll wrap up and talk about the next meeting and stuff like that. So with that, I'll go to the next screen. Oh, just really quick. Who am I? Right? Just really quick. I'm actually now just finished my final exam for this term. I've got 2 more courses. I'm done with my next and last master's, I will say, in data science. I love this stuff. I love, math, data science, and Viz, and I'm all for it. And I do a bunch of that at work too. I do IoT, data science, and BI at Baxter. Also really quick, where can you find this user group? You can find us on LinkedIn, and here I'm gonna go out of full screen for the moment there. You can find us on LinkedIn and also via the Tableau community link. So I'm gonna go there really quick. We don't need to see that. We'll go to this one. So here's the Tableau community link. If you were to go to Tableau community, you can search for this user group. We're in there. You can see North Suburban Chicago, and we'll do posts in there as well. But really, honestly, the main place where we do most of our activity is in LinkedIn. And in LinkedIn, all you have to do is search for North Suburban Chicago Tableau user group, and you'll find this group out there, and you'll see activity out there. And if you go there, if you're looking, you can make posts out there. You can let people know about some new Viz thing that you found that's really interesting. Or just comment on other people's posts. That would be great. This is where we'll do all our communications with the user group is via the LinkedIn. All right, I'll go back here. Another thing really quick, we needed a logo. So I'm going to hide some of these people here. We needed a logo. I did ask the user group a couple different quarters for help or input, and nobody had raised their hand, so I raised my own hand, and I came up with what we have here on the screen. So I have a wide version and a box version. The trick with North Suburban Chicago is we're not the Chicago user group, right? If we were Chicago, I would show all kinds of Chicago icons, right? Maybe like you see in the middle here, like the bean and the Ferris wheel and Hancock and stuff like that. But since we're North Suburban, I kind of incorporated that. But kind of indicated that, hey, go from up there into this suburban looking Tableau house kind of housing area there. This is what I came up with. As I put out on LinkedIn, if someone's got an improvement, I can certainly share my source materials with you. Or if you want to do one from scratch, I'd be more than happy to take a look at it. You can see some of the other great logos off on the right. Again, since we're not Chicago, we can't really replicate what London did. And what's really a distinctive icon of North Suburban, not exactly Chicago, I don't know. That's why I did what I did. This one with the Loch Ness Monster is awesome. Love that one. The Saints one, right, or the New Orleans user group, that's iconic and perfect for theirs. St. Louis, some of these are very clearly have great identification with their city, which is really cool, really cool. But those are some of the best ones, I think, that I've seen over there. With that, that's all our intro stuff for the moment. I am going to pass it to our first presenter, Eric. So Eric, if you want to share your screen, you can take off, and I will mute myself.
All right, thank you very much. Let me share this with you. Everybody can see my screen. I had a quick panic attack right before we connected when I lost connection to work, but now I'm back, so hopefully I'll keep it for the next 20 minutes. So I am Eric Howard. I'm the manager of data analytics for the section of surgical sciences at Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Nashville, Tennessee. And I appreciate the North Suburban Chicago Tableau User Group for having me today. I've been working in IT my whole life, and I've been using Tableau since version 7. So you can say I'm experienced. When I'm not working, I like adventure, exploring, and just being outdoors. And getting outside and away from people over the past year has really helped me keep my sanity. But today we're here to talk about row-level security. So I want to show you what row-level security will do to your data. Then we'll talk about the different options for using row-level security in your Tableau workbooks. And then I'll show you specifically how to use all those options in your workbooks. I'm sure you'll have many questions, but please hold them to the end or put them in the Q&A window. I hope I'll answer most of those questions as we go along, since the presentation sort of builds on itself. Today, I'll be working with this Star Wars data set. It's the original Star Wars workbook by Diane Mitra from the Tableau Public. It's an excellent data set for this demo because every movie line is a row of data assigned to a character. So I'll be using this in conjunction with an entitlements table that maps those lines to the characters logged into the server and displays those lines in the dashboard. So let me show you how that all works. So this is the basic dashboard. If you hover over it, you see all the different lines and interactivity that Diane built into it. I have added the row-level security to it, so you can see I'm connected to my server down here, and I have created different users on that server. I'm using a security policy to create role-based row-level security. So the roles that I have, Yoda sees everything because he's all-knowing in the Force. The Emperor also sees everything, but then the generals or leaders see their alliance members, and then individual members only see their data. So that's sort of the role-based row-level security that I've built in this model. So see it in action. Yoda sees everything, and Vader sees only his lines, and C-3PO only sees his lines. So you can see real quick that you can take a really great dashboard and make it look pretty bad with row-level security. So my first recommendation to you is really think about what it's going to do to that fully functional dashboard when you add row-level security. Let's take a look at what's going on behind the lines. So I've got Tableau 2020.3 because that's what our production server is. I'm not using the relationship model. This is the regular model. This is the combined data that came with the Tableau Public workbook. And then I'm joining it to an entitlements table with an inner join, and that inner join does the filtering. So with row-level security, you need a connection to a server so that you have a user connection. You need a user level function that you can use in a calculation, and then you need use that function in a data source filter. So here I've got my security policy that calculates a true false and returns the trues so that only the true lines are shown to that end user. So that's sort of an overview of how row-level security works. So let's take a look at the 4 layers of security that are built into Tableau. Back 1. So we've got the, 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 Tableau server, for row level security, you have to have the server so that you can log in and it knows who you are. With that, you've got server security, site security, workbook security, and data security. And we'll look at which parts of each of those can be used in row level security. For server security, this level deals with how you connect to the server securely. It's your network connection and authorization. I suggest you build a relationship with your server administrator and understand which of these are implemented in your environment. If you're ever audited, you'll want to know that information. Of these, site roles can be leveraged for row level security. Once you're securely connected to the server, then you can use the site security. Site roles, groups, and users can be leveraged for row level security. As I said, I've connected to a server. So I've got this Tableau online server that is part of the Tableau development group. I've created users. I don't own the Star Wars domain, but I just created users with email addresses that were obvious for who that user was. And then I assigned them to different groups on the server. If this was my production server, then these groups would be my departments and other work groups, and would probably have individual users or Active Directory groups within those. But here, the all users is the Emperor and Yoda and myself, and then the Empire or all the generals in the Empire, and so on and so forth. So that's a look at the server component of row level security. The next part of our layer in the data layer cake is the workbook security. You see this when you publish your workbook to the server. So with the workbook security, you need to be aware of compromising your security by allowing users to have more permissions than they should. If they can download your data or edit it online, then they can change your security and bypass the security you've built into your workbook. So these are the default permissions when you publish to Tableau server. So make sure that you're not using the defaults, or you may be compromising that security. The next layer of security is the data layer of security. That's really what I want to focus on today. There are two types of data level security. There's live data connections and extract data security. The live data connections are really too complicated to talk about in a 20-minute presentation. It's really going to be tied to your back-end infrastructure and your authentication that you have set up on your Tableau server. So there's a lot of combinations of how to make that work. If you are a Tableau developer doing embedded Tableau, these are what you'll probably want to use to make your apps work with row level security. But today we're going to focus on extract level security. And a lot of these functions will work with the live data connections. So it's not a total loss there. So let's get started taking a look at these options in detail. As I mentioned, besides having a connection to the server and logging in, you need to use one of the user level functions when you're doing row level security. The two that I use are the username function and the isMemberOf function. The username function returns the name of the logged in user from the server, and the isMemberOf function returns true if the user is a member of that server group that's named in the function. So how can we use these? The first way we can do it is what I call strict username row level security. This is using the username equals user ID, where the user ID is a row of data in the data source. I would recommend when you're creating your data models, you consider including those user level fields. If you can do that, that will save some time further down the road and having to rebuild things. But let's look at how that works in actuality. The one thing, if you learn one thing today, I hope it's this. I've got a text file that has a lot of my calculations. I can cut and paste that into a calculated or a calculation in my workbook. But then once I've done that, I can highlight a field and just drag and drop it. And then it creates that calculation in my workbook. I use this a lot with date calculations and things that I do over and over again. But today that creates my user function. So that says username equals user ID, where the user ID is one of my fields in my entitlements table. I'll go up and edit the data source filter. I'll remove the security policy and add my username row level security filter. I want to keep the true fields. And now you will see that I have exactly one row of data that I added to the end of my data source. But Yoda sees his rows and Vader sees his rows. And if we go look at Piet, he says his rows. Now, if we look at the data itself, you can see these are all the rows that Piet has in the data, all his lines. There are no other filters. So Tableau server is just giving this workbook these rows of data. There's nothing else he can get to. So if he exports his data, if you give him an export button or they use the workbook export, this is all he'll get. He won't get anything else because of the row level security. So let's reset that. So where would you use this, or why would you want to use this in such a restrictive fashion? We use it for HR data. So if you want to have a user log in and only see their information and not see anybody else's, use strict row level security. We use it with patient data. If you want a patient to connect to a workbook and only see their data, use strict row level security. One of the novel ways that I use it, I have a lot of faculty who are physicians. They're very busy. They're not very technically savvy. So they will not go to my Tableau server and drill into the dashboards and find what they want. So I use workbooks with strict row level security to present their reports to them. And then I create subscriptions to those workbooks that send those workbooks as a PDF to their email on the report cycle. If they want to interact with those workbooks, they can click on the image in the email. It will take them to Tableau server, and then they can interact with that report. If they don't, most of the information that they want to see is right there in the PDF, and so they get their information and they're happy. So it's a simple use of strict row level security to give people what they need when they need it, and they love it. So next in our data security journey is our row level security with the server user filter. So the Tableau desktop has a create user filter under the server menu option. It basically creates a set that you can add as a data source filter. The set definition uses the server objects to filter that set when you log in. So the users see only what you assign to them in that set. So let's see how that works and how we can use it. Again, I've created two sets already. I can go ahead and edit this one. And you can see I've got the, well, cancel that. I need to go remove my other data source filter. Okay. Now that I see everything, if I go into my filter and edit the set, I've got the Empire and the Rebel Alliance. This is my group on my server, and that is assigned to see the Rebels see the Rebel Alliance data, and the Empire users see the Empire data. If I go and add that to my data source, I go and do the group filter, okay, and I select all of them and say okay. And then when Yoda logs in, he sees all the Alliance data. When Vader logs in, he sees all the Empire data, and all the Empire users see exactly the same thing. How do I create that? You go to Server and create user filter. You choose the field that you want to filter on. Again, I use the Galactic Empire. Let me go reset my user so I see all the data. Create user filter Alliance, and then I choose Empire and assign them Galactic Empire, and Rebel and assign them to the Rebel Alliance. Then I would save that and assign it to that group filter. So I use this sort of row level security when I have a department that needs to see everything in that department, but they don't need to see another department's data. So it's a real simple way of giving them everything they need within that group, but not letting them see other groups that they don't need to. I manage 17 departments and divisions of surgery, and we don't share data between most of them. So I use this sort of feature a lot, or have used it a lot. The other way you can do this set row level security is to actually go in and assign things on a user basis. So this was the sort of second way that Tableau offered for doing row level security. And you could approximate role-based row level security by assigning different users different permissions. And so for this, I've got the generals have access to all of their users' data. Individuals have access to theirs. And again, the emperor has access to everybody's. If I want to add somebody, I could go down to Admiral Piet and say, I want to make him a general in the Empire. So I'll go find Bader, who is also a general, and I'll assign him. And now Piet has the same sort of permissions as Vader. If we go assign that to as a data source filter, we remove that one and go add the dimension filter. We choose everybody because it's going to be filtered when the user logs in. And we look at Yoda. He sees everybody. Vader sees the empires. Piet also sees the empires, but C-3PO only sees his data. So that's one way of doing role-based row level security. Is very manually intensive. Tableau does not recommend this method anymore, but it still works. And if you're in a small company with limited resources, this may be a feature that you still want to do. If you are working as a consultant for a small business, every time you have to go in and change the security, it's billable hours. But you do have to change the security and publish it back to the server for this security to be implemented. So it is very labor intensive. So the last form of data security and the coup de grace that we're going to talk about today is the role-based row level security with a security policy. I call this a hybrid function because it's using the groups on the server and the data in the entitlements table to do the policy. Strict data-only entitlements would be more of a true row-level security. And you can get to that with more detailed entitlements tables and live connections and such. For our purposes, we're going to be using this hybrid security policy. So let's have a look at how that works. If I go in and look at my security policy, I'm using the isMember function so that those who are in the all group, which is myself, the Emperor, and Yoda, will see everything. If they were a member of that Rebel leader and the alliance field equals Rebel Alliance, then they will see all of those rows. If they're a member of that Rebel Empire leader on the server and the alliance field says Galactic Empire, then they will see those rows. If they're just a Joe member out on the server, then they will only see their rows of data. Again, this is just a true false field. So we will go assign that to the data source filter. We can remove this one and then go add our security policy. We'll keep the true fields. And now if we go select different users, Yoda sees everything, Vader sees his, and C3PO sees his. So that is role-based, row-level security with a security policy. And I would say, again, be very careful of faux level security. You need to make sure that as Tableau introduces new features, that they don't compromise your security. When I first started this way back in version 7, you couldn't edit a workbook online. And I'm not sure you could download the data either. So as it's progressed, you have to make sure that you secure your workbooks from being downloaded or altered offline. And you need to make sure that your sets and calcs are being secured so they can't be edited online. And secure your entitlements tables wherever they exist, whether they're an Excel spreadsheet or a SQL Server table. Now we'll go say the industry best practice is for this entitlements table to be a SQL table, and that this would be a live connection to SQL Server that uses row-level security itself. So only the user's entitlements would be returned in this query and then joined to your data. If you've got the infrastructure for doing that, that is the best way to do it. But that's it for me. I would love to share this workbook with you, but unfortunately it's tied to my Tableau server. So I've created this Tableau public workbook that has all of these slides and the list of resources. If you go out to my Tableau public site, you can download this workbook or a copy of this presentation and a link to the resources. So the resources I would recommend are a white paper for best practices on row-level security with entitlements table. And then these documents that are in the Tableau server online documentation. But this is the white paper, and it's very good if you're interested in learning more about entitlements tables. So that's it for me. If we have time, I'll take some questions. Otherwise, Alex, back to you.
Hi, Eric. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. That was an excellent session. We do have some questions open in the Q&A. Can you go ahead and look at them yourself and then you can pick through them, or would you like me to read them to you? I think you can see them.
Let me find the Q&A. I had it open. So thanks for discussing RLS. We followed server user filter process based on division. When the database team added new divisions, do they notify you? Reason for asking: when the division was added, it is not going to be automatically to the group when you need to have access to all divisions. If you have the infrastructure and they automate that sort of stuff with Active Directory, then I think, yes, that will be automated. But in our environment, no, I did not get notified when new users and new groups are created outside of our group. I'm the one that creates those inside my group, so I would know about that. What else is there? When we created the join between the data sources and the users list, does the extract create multiple copies for every user? That's a good question. That goes back to the original sort of row level security for Tableau. When you just had that username equals user function, you used to have to explode the data, which was basically do a cross join of every user and the amount of the lines of data that you wanted them to have, and join that with your data. And that would, like I said, explode it. And then you would filter it down with your row level security. I did that a lot for years, and I had 4 or 5 people that had access to all the rows, and then department managers, and then individual users. So even with all that repetition, it did not, because of Tableau's compression, the largest extract that I ever had was 1.2 times the raw data. So just like when you go in and you duplicate a data source, it doesn't make a full copy of that. It really just copies the metadata. Tableau does some smart things to make sure that that doesn't happen. But these days, if you use the security policy, you should be able to do the same thing and not have to do that exploding of the data.
So actually, if I can, this is Geoff Somerville.
Yeah.
We also changed the way, there's some options that changed back in 2018 that allow you to extract data, separate tables independently of one another. Essentially what Tableau does is create a separate hyperfile for each table. So your fact table would be a separate hyperfile from your entitlement table. And then Tableau understands the relationship between the two and does not explode your data any longer. They remain separate tables that at runtime, it understands the relationship between the two and only returns back the rows that you need. So you can actually go back and use that methodology. You just have to go in and select that you no longer want a single extract. You want there to be multiple table extracts.
Yeah, the multi-table extracts. Yep. Okay. Any impact on large performance data sets or large user groups? I mean, large data sets are always going to affect performance. It should actually improve performance a little bit if you're filtering a lot, because it's just going to pull the rows that are relative to that user for them to work with in the workbook. So it actually should help a bit, but it will create large data sets. Yeah. And this is great, almost like dynamic LPPs and advanced security and slicer dicer. You must be an Epic user. I'm not sure what, I'm not an Epic user, but I do know what slicer dicer is. So yeah. All right, well, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, and I appreciate you having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And Eric, you run another user group, is that not right, in Nashville?
Yes, I'm part of the Nashville TUG leadership team. Correct.
Well,
And
thanks
so-
for visiting with us. That's actually where I found you. One of my colleagues is based in Nashville, Jody Bosley, and so got you through that user group. So thank you very much for joining us up north here.
All right, you are welcome.
With that, we'll pass on to Paul. Paul, if you want to take it away, you're up next.
Excellent. Let me start sharing my screen. All right, so if Zoom is keeping up, you should be able to see my slides. What's new in Tableau? Yes.
Yep.
We can
I
see you,
see
Paul.
it.
We got you.
Excellent. All right. Good morning. Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Villanueva, Tableau Lead Solutions Engineer. And today I've been asked to present a session on what's new in Tableau 2021.1. All right. So just a quick note about me, Lead Solution Engineer, been with Tableau for 3 years, been in the analytics industry for about a dozen years. I'm a Chicagoan, avid Bears fan, Dub Bears. Yeah, and that's a pic of me and my best bud, our family dog, during last year's TC virtual conference. So first time I was able to bring my dog to a Tableau conference. All righty, so here are the main highlights of 2021. That's a tongue twister. Of 2021.1 release. As you can see, it covers AI-powered analytics, prep, data connections, and with every release, you'll always see steps being taken to bring that web authoring experience more on par with desktop. We got stuff in augmented analytics, geospatial, licensing, some of the add-ons as well, data management, server management, and metrics. Now, I'll go through most of these in the time that we have allotted today, but I definitely recommend going to our What's New page and seeing the fuller list and some more examples of some of these enhancements new in 2021.1. All right, so the star of this release is that we are now taking steps to bringing together the best of both worlds, that Tableau and Salesforce Einstein Analytics experience, to deliver that world's leading analytics platform with the broadest and deepest capabilities. Of course, everyone knows Tableau brings that powerful data exploration, that visualization with, broad connectivity to all kinds of data anywhere, and that breadth of deployment on any cloud, on-prem, on our Tableau Online SaaS offering, as well as all those integration capabilities. Salesforce Einstein, now branded as Tableau CRM or TCRM, brings all that actionable analytics, that enterprise AI ML capabilities embedded natively in Salesforce with that high capacity, high performance data access. So the first step in bringing these two platforms together is being able to take advantage of that Salesforce Einstein AI ML capabilities in Tableau. So as a result, we are now bringing the Einstein Discovery into a Tableau experience. So furthering how we can help people see and understand their data. Einstein Discovery, that's the Salesforce AI powered prediction engine, taking Tableau from that traditional, the visual descriptive diagnostic analytics, building insights on what happened or why something happened, to now that more predictive, prescriptive side of things, with insights around what may happen in your data, or what is that next best action to take as a result of that predictive insight. So this relationship of Tableau and that Salesforce Einstein Discovery manifests itself in 3 areas. First is enabling Einstein Discovery in an extension in a dashboard. So if you recall, Tableau extensions are a way for extending that Tableau core functionality by leveraging our extensions API. We have a whole gallery where our partners have developed all kinds of cool ways to extend the Tableau product. That is how we are enabling access to the Salesforce Einstein Discovery APIs, is via a dashboard extension. The second way is our new analytics service. It's basically a Tableau calculation, bringing in those predictive scores inside of a calculation in Tableau. The third way of taking advantage of Einstein Discovery is in Tableau Prep, by enabling that bulk scoring inside of a Tableau Prep experience. Now, in my presentation or my section of today's webinar, I'll introduce these new Einstein features, but in the next session of today's webinar, my colleague Geoff Somerville will actually take us through a more story demo of this. You'll kind of see this in a real life scenario in his part of today's webinar. Okay, so what is Einstein Discovery? It's that rich AI powered, built on Salesforce predictive engine that really requires, little to no code to get up and running. It's all wizard based, it's point and click. What Einstein does is takes your data, analyzes, and helps you build these predictive models and give you reasons or leading causes on why that predictive insight is as such. In the first place, we've enabled this in a dashboard extension here. It's 2021, and it does require an Einstein Discovery license. So speak to your account execs on what that Einstein Discovery license means financially. So in the animation here, you can see that the dashboard extension pop up with that little Einstein character there, and that's giving us those real-time predictive scores. You know, the reasons and how it got to that predictive score, and then the other things you can do to improve that scoring. So yeah, the first mode is that via a dashboard extension. You'll see a lot more of this demo live in action in Geoff's section here. Just to give you an idea of some of the types of use cases that you could apply predictions on is, you know, things like win rate, time to close, cross-sell, upsell, churn, maybe predicting equipment downtime, et cetera, et cetera. It will be really interesting to see all the new use cases that this prediction engine enables with what you can do with Tableau now. All right, the second way we've enabled this integration is through a new Einstein Analytics service. What happens is, as soon as you build that Einstein Discovery model in Salesforce and deploy it, you're going to have the ability to copy a Tableau table calculation. Then use that logic in your Tableau desktop or creator experience in your own calculation. So you're going to cut and paste it from Einstein and bring it into Tableau, and you can parameterize it, bring in other data sets, put all your business logic around it. But this is another way at getting at that predictive score is via a calculation. Works on desktop, works on server, works on Tableau Align. Yes, it does require an additional Einstein license. All right, with Tableau Prep, we now have the ability to output flows to Microsoft Excel. Excel output on the desktop, so you no longer have to open a CSV file and convert it to Excel. In addition, we've added incremental refreshes with the Salesforce connector. Now you can trigger a refresh on your Salesforce data on a field like, I don't know, last modified by. And then rather than refreshing the entire table, you can bring along just those newly changed data as needed with the new incremental refreshes support for the Salesforce connector. Other things we've done, we've added additional web connected data sources in 2021.1. Things like Amazon Athena, Apache Drill, OData, and SharePoint lists. So definitely check out our list of supported web connected data sources. This list is growing with each and every release as we keep adding to the types of things that we can connect to from a web supported perspective. We've also heavily invested across the cloud stacks, AWS, Google, Azure, to just make sure that our customers can access their data anywhere. And we've doubled down on Azure as we continue to embrace all the clouds. We've created a variety of connectors that now allow you to plug into all of your critical Azure data services seamlessly. So many customers rely on Azure SQL Database as a managed cloud-hosted version of SQL Server. So we've released an entirely new Azure SQL Database connector, which will support their Azure Active Directory authentication, a critical security requirement for a lot of our customers leveraging the Azure platform. And we've added Azure AD authentication support to all of these Azure connectors that you see listed here. Now, beyond the Azure SQL Database Connect, Tableau's new Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, well, that's a large name there. Native connector, this Tableau native connector allows you now to surf all of that data on the lake and answer any questions that they may have without needing to take any extra steps to download the data or relying on IT to push it to other data sources. Use that Azure Data Lake Gen connector directly to the stuff that you're putting in those data lakes. As if that wasn't enough, we've also added the ability to use Azure Key Vault. That's the key management system for Tableau Server. So this integration allows you to leverage Azure's native key management system to encrypt your Tableau extracts. Okay, moving on. We're constantly reevaluating what we've created to make it more accessible for our users. So we've heard LODs, level of detail calculations, which allow you to create calculations at the granularity of your choosing and ignore the filters and the order of operations. We've heard that those are a little bit complex. Folks always have to look up the syntax and how to create an LOD. So we've tried to simplify by creating this quick LODs means. So all you have to do now is highlight a dimension and measure what you want. Right click and you'll be able to create that LOD calculation, and bam, you're done. Let's take a look at an example of this. Let's switch to my browser. I'll just go to a new sheet. All right, so there's two ways to create that quick LOD. The first way is to just drag a measure on top of a dimension. Now, quick note on dragging a measure on top of a dimension. If I wanted to build an LOD of sales by, I don't know, category, subcategory, I would drag it. But when you just drag sales, it thinks that you want to move a measure to the dimensions. So the way this works is you click on the sales, you hold down the control key, or if you're on a Mac, you're holding down the command key, and you'll notice that now there's a little bit of a blue highlight there. So this means I don't want to move the field, but I do want to apply something else by creating a quick LOD here. So let's build some sales by subcategory here. Drop it there. You'll notice it's created a new measure. If I take a look at this guy, there's your LOD. Now, right now in its current form, it only does fixed. So you can edit the calculation to change it to includes, excludes, and add all your other business logic and complex calculations and so forth and so on. But it's a great way to at least get that base syntax right. I'm always having to look up, is it a squiggly bracket? Where did I put the colon? And so forth and so on. So yeah, that's the first step, is being able to at least get the base LOD out there and automatically creating a measure. The other way that you can do this as well is just by highlighting, let's do it on category. So if I highlight category and I hit the control key or the command key on a Mac, sales, now I right click and I can say create the LOD calculation. Brings up that same ability. I can save this, name the field, but again, it's just another quick way of creating those fixed LODs. So yeah, that's the first step in trying to make the syntax, or at least the creation of level of detail calculations, easier in Tableau. Let's go back to my slides. All right, true to delivering choice on flex and flexibility, sometimes you just want to put stuff where you want versus being stuck with the way the creator designed the dashboard with all its defaults. So new in 2021.1, you can now reorder headers on a viz on the web. This works on desktop, but we're adding this experience to that web experience. And again, we're trying to bring that web experience more and more in line with desktop with the features and functions. Another trick, so you can drag and drop. If you wanted to compare January and April together, put them right next to each other. If I wanted to reorder the furniture, office, technology supplies, I can just drag and drop them as well. Another trick that's a part of this refresh is those headers and those axis objects, they're all now native HTML elements in the browser. Why does that matter? So now what I can do is I can use my browser search capabilities, use the Chrome browser or your Safari browser search capabilities to look for text in those header or on those axis objects. So if I did a search on technology, I'll be able to find that on my chart. It's really helpful when you got a lot of large charts with a lot of complex things going on. If you're looking for a specific item, well, those headers and those axis headers they're all HTML items. So now I can do a quick browser search to find them inside of my browser. All right, back in 2019, we debuted dashboard extensions. And oh, by the way, that's what our Einstein Discovery engine is using. It's using also a dashboard extension. Basically, they allow external developers to create that custom functionality that's not on core Tableau. For example, being able to enable, write back to a database, or, other types of visualizations, that are, a little bit more complex to create inside of Tableau and have something just readily available. So back then, you actually had to go to the web, go to our extensions gallery, download a Trex file, and bring that into your creator, your desktop experience. That all goes away now, because now we have this in-product extension gallery. So within desktop or within web authoring, you'll be able to surf all of those extensions, made by our partners, and just bring them directly into your visualization. I don't have to deal with pulling that Trex file in, mapping it to a place that my desktop or my server can see it. That's all kind of in-product experience now. It's an in-product extensions gallery. Let's take a look at an example of this. We'll just go back to the same dashboard, and we'll add an extension here. And you'll see that I can just drag this extension to my dashboard. And I'm presented now with this new UI, where now I can surf all of the extensions that are out there. And they're grouped, everything for advanced analytics, viz formatting, NL generation, and so forth and so on here. And I can also surf if you've created or custom developed your own extensions as well. For this example, let's see what we want to do. Let's just create a new viz type here. We'll do a bar race here. We'll pull this extension down. Excuse me. Of course, this is an extension. The partner wants to advertise their services. Some extensions obviously require fees. Some of them are free, but it's just a way that our partners can kind of advertise their services and their wares and so forth and so on. All right, let's add this extension. Notice I didn't have to deal with any kind of Trex files and putting in a place where my desktop or my server can see it. And then I'll configure this extension. This is just specific to this extension. We're going to say, I don't know, we'll point it to this sheet, and we'll just configure the date field, the measures, and the subcategory as my items. I'm just going to adjust the speed of this bar chart. This is an animated bar chart that races across the years. We'll just make this a little bit slower here. 1,000 milliseconds, and then the pause. Whoa, where'd my mouse go? Just make this 2,000 milliseconds. And there you go. I've created an extension inside of my web authoring experience. It's marching across time through those years of data in that Superstore sample data set there. And yeah, that's just another easier way to go out and create extensions rather than having to surf out in the extensions gallery and dealing with Trex files. So here's a great example of how we're trying to make that a lot more easier here. All right, let's go back to my slides. Other things that we're doing along the lines of bringing web authoring on a feature parity with desktop, we've introduced that device designer for web authoring there. So you can see there on the right-hand side, I've got it for a phone device. I can have it automatically reorganize the visualizations to fit the phone layout. I can add a desktop, a tablet viewing as well. All the stuff that you can already do on desktop, but you can now do via web authoring. The other thing we've improved is all those formatting options. While creating and editing dashboards on the web, you can now format those filters, those parameters, those legends directly in the browser. Stuff that you could already do on desktop. Again, we're just bringing the web authoring experience on par at parity with desktop. And you're going to see a lot of that with every release. We're releasing all kinds of things to quickly bring up that web authoring experience on par with the desktop experience. Natural language processing, or NLP, is becoming a huge deal in my customers, especially across that insurance space where companies are trying to make data more accessible to their agents, their brokers. The one thing standing between those users and their data is just the ability to ask questions. And the one thing we've heard was just to be able to give more hints, a little bit more documentation how to use it for the end user. So we've come up with this one-click pop-up guide that users can navigate around to access documentation or even get into like the usage analytics. How many folks are actually using Ask Data? What types of questions they're asking? The other thing we've done is given greater control on what fields can be indexed or non-indexed. That way, Ask Data will formulate the question much more quicker just on the fields that you've indexed. Sometimes you got things like comment fields is a good example that you still want to bring in because they might help support a visualization, but it's not something I would necessarily want my users to ask questions about. So you wouldn't index like a comment field as an example. So yeah, those are the two things. Actually, here, let's just take a quick look at that as well. Switch to my browser. So this is Ask Data that we all are familiar with. I can ask questions like, whoops, I should have refreshed it. I can ask questions like, what is the total claim amount by state? And it brings me a visualization. But what's changed is you got this little informational icon. Highlight that and I have access to documentation. For the owners, I got access to how I can set up the data better for my users. I even have access to usage analytics. Now this is my own demo org, so I won't have as much stats, but basically you get an understanding of how many unique users are accessing this this Ask Data section. How many questions are being asked? What is the usage over time? Who are the top users? What are the questions that they're asking? So all this useful information just to understand how effective that Ask Data is for your end users there. Again, this is my demo environment here, so you're only going to see myself logging in here, but if I had an environment where I had multiple folks, you'd see all that activity as well. The other thing that we changed or added is, again, the indexing capability. So when I ask questions, a lot of these fields are indexed to help Ask Data go answer that question much faster, but there are things like, I should have a comment field. Oh, here you go, nature of accident. It's a bunch of text. This might be something that's not really relevant from an analytics perspective, but I still want to bring the field in because it might be pertinent to the analysis. So what I might want to do is just don't index this field. So it's not part of that processing engine for Ask Data. Just turn off the index values for a comment field. So yeah, it's another way that we're trying to make Ask Data, react more quicker to questions and much more friendlier to all the types of things that you may ask inside of Ask Data. Go back to my slides. The other thing we've added is support for spatial files coming from KMZ. You could always load KML files. Like KMZ is basically a compressed version of that. You can also do this with Snowflake locational data as well. Just a quick example of that. We'll go in and just create a new workbook. And we're going to upload that KMZ file. I've got data showing volcanoes around the world. And you'll see that when I pull this data in, it's actually a whole bunch of KML files just compressed into one giant KMZ. Let's just do a quick visualization on, let's do all the volcanoes in the US. Bring that in. Build a quick visualization. I actually had no clue that we had so many volcanoes on the West Coast here. The only things I knew of were, I think this is Yellowstone, and somewhere over here is Mount Rainier. Yeah, Mount Rainier. But yeah, this is just a quick example of how I can now bring in a compressed file of all those KML files inside of a KMZ file. But yeah, once I did this example, I had no clue that there were this many volcanoes on the Western coast. All right, let's go back to my slides. The other thing we've done is we've changed or totally revamped our notifications center. We created this unified notification. So in your server, when you look at your notifications now, you will see notifications for everything. If someone's commented on a dashboard, if you have a data flow run that's completed or errored, if you have an extract job, and so forth and so on. So you'll see the notification center is a lot more all-inclusive now of all kinds of things. And you can control it too. You can mark things as red. I can control through my preferences what things I want to see in notifications. But yeah, we've basically revamped it so that all notifications go to one place now. We've also improved licensing for cloud and VMs. So this authorized to run, or this server ATR, is an overhaul, a modernization of our licensing infrastructure in Tableau Server. Server ATR allows customers to license Tableau Server in any cloud container or virtual environments and not be impacted by those underlying machine hardware changes. So if you've ever played with cloud or VM server installations before, and you've moved them around or made any kind of changes, RAM, CPU assigned to that VM, that underlying hardware changes, in the past, it would cause an activation of your server license. And then sometimes it's confusing because how many actual server installations you may have, and suddenly Tableau gives you a warning, you've had max activations on your server, and all you've done was tinker with the VM, the underlying settings and whatnot. So we've changed that now with this new ATR service, making it easier now for you to move around your Tableau cloud installations or your VMs without causing all those license activation headaches now. Zero downtime, with zero downtime licensing now, admins can apply those term and capacity licensing changes to your Tableau server without requiring any kind of restarts or disrupting any of your business activities. Metrics. You can now see a film strip of all of the metrics associated with a dashboard. So here on the right, you can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 metrics associated with this dashboard. So just to recap what metrics are, if I just go to my browser here, think of metrics as a quick way to create a KPI, on something inside of a dashboard, but not having to drive to that dashboard to see what that number is. You'll see this in your server browser experience as well as in the mobile app experience as well. All the metrics you create will bubble up to the top here. You can set them as favorites. But all these metrics came from a gazillion different dashboards that I might have access to. But rather than driving to those dashboards, I have them here as a quick lookup here. And I can go out and create metrics as well. What you'll see here, the new thing is when I create a metric, I get to see all of the other metrics that are already have been created around each of these dashboards in case I wanted to reuse any of them. There's another one that's got already 3 of them out here created. So that's the new thing, is this little film strip of all of the metrics that have been created. But let's just say I wanted to keep tabs on gross paid losses, right? Hit this, hit create. And now I've got a gross paid losses metric here over time, give it a description, hit create. Oh, it looks like I created that in a previous demonstration. But now when I look at the metrics tab, I get to see, well, I'll refresh my browser, but I'll get to see all 4 of the metrics I've created. But yeah, it's a great way to keep tabs on KPIs without having to always drive to all those individual dashboards. I have them easily accessible at the top of my project folders, visible on the browser, visible on a mobile device as well. All right, and that brings me to the end of what I wanted to present. Definitely do recommend going out to our new features URL to kind of see all of the new things that we've introduced in 2021. I've kind of highlighted what I could compress inside of a lot of time today, but there's definitely a bunch of more things as well out there. And now I guess I'll throw it over to Geoff, unless there's questions or comments.
I don't see any in the Q&A at the moment. We can always come back at the end if someone has a lagging question.
So I'm not sure what happened with Zoom. Zoom and I are fighting right now. Shrujan asked, how do we find out more about ATR? I just added a link that describes it in a little bit more detail. And what I would also recommend that you do is reach out to your Tableau account team, the account exec or the solution engineer who supports your company, and they'll be able to ask further or answer further questions. And also, if you want to go further detail, we can figure out what resource would need to be internally to help you move forward.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeff. I saw it was answered. I didn't realize it was just you fighting with
Well,
WebEx or
for
Zoom.
some reason, I went to start typing and it was like, oh, you've answered the question. I'm like, no, I didn't. So sorry about that, guys.
Even if you say you've answered it, you could, there's another button where you can type the answer, but you got it. Yeah, I see it out there. There is another question out there, Eric, or no, sorry, Paul.
Why is prep getting active in unlicensed node when we upgrade? I'm not sure what the question is around. Jeff,
Yeah, so
can you
that almost
explain?
seems like a support issue. So if you're having something that's getting activated that you not intending to be activated, I would strongly suggest that you submit a support case and work through our support to have them figure out what's going on with your licensing. Sorry, Paul.
No, it's all right. I'm going to answer for Paul and say it's all right. I don't see any other questions at the moment. So like I said before, if someone has a laggard, you can always put another question out there and we can address them later or offline if we run out of time. But with that, I think given we're looking clean, let's go right on to Jeff, if you're all right with that.
Certainly. So I don't have a, and call me terrible, I don't have a slide of this. I just really have a demonstration that I wanted to go through and kind of show you guys that's going to tie a lot of the things that Paul just talked to you about, but put it into a scenario that becomes a little bit more real. This is going to be a demonstration. I work in the healthcare and life sciences industry. In fact, I was in the pharma industry for 18 and a half years prior to joining Tableau about 3 years ago, as a customer for 5 years. So I've been around Tableau for quite a long time. And what we're going to walk you through is kind of a demonstration of what life can be like being in a sales organization within a pharmaceutical company, trying to figure out what can be done to help our sales reps figure out how to communicate better with physicians or HCPs so that they start writing prescriptions for our medications over our competitors, thus improving market share and ultimately driving our company to make more revenue. So this story actually starts, and let me pause real quick. You guys should see my my iPhone here up on your screen. So I just want to make sure that I am indeed sharing my screen.
Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. So this is going to start kind of this morning. I'm going to start as maybe a brand manager for a pharmaceutical company who is seeing how things are going with this new drug that we just launched about 8 months ago called Astrocept. And what I want to know is what's going on with Astrocept. Now, as the brand manager, I don't really need to understand the infinite details of what's going on. What I really want to know is at a high level, what's happening. And so I happen to know that my Tableau team has provided me with some metrics that give me the information that I need at my level in order to understand if I have a problem or if I don't. So we're going to go into Tableau Mobile here. And just like Paul was alluding to earlier, I have a series of metrics that have been published that I have favorited. And now I'm kind of looking across my portfolio to understand what might be going on. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing is that my market share, weekly market share, is down 8%. And so I can jump into this metric. And because it is simply a number, there's not a ton more that you can see here. However, I can see what that information is tied back to. I can see who the owner of the data is. I can see when it was last modified. But I can also go in and if it's a time series, I can see, I really am just interested in what's happening in the past 12 weeks. And I want to make a shadow overlay so I can compare kind of week to week what's going on. And what I can do is I can actually come across and see that you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, we started slacking, or we're way above, but then something happened and our market share started falling. It looked like we had a rebound, but now it looks like we're falling again. I want to figure out why we're falling again, and I want to see what action that we can take. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to come into Slack. I'm going to send one of my operations or sales managers a message. So I'm just going to send it to myself. So, oops. Or dripping, yeah. If I could spell, it'd be great. But you guys get the point. And what's going to happen is it's going to send a message with that link to this metric directly to my operations manager. Now I'm gonna transition here real quick, and I'm now going to be that operations manager who came in the morning. And I keep saying operations manager. I actually mean sales manager. And I looked at that metric, and I was able to see that that metric is tied to this dashboard. And what we're looking at here is a dashboard that is combining some prescription behaviors that are giving me some revenue numbers up here. It's also showing me of total prescriptions, what percent of my prescriptions are new versus refills. For those of you that might not be super familiar with pharmaceutical sales, new prescriptions is an indicator. If that's on the rise, that means that that physicians are writing more prescriptions of your medicine. Refills is simply an indication that people who are already on the drug are staying on the drug. And what we're looking at over here is all of the sales reps that are within my territory. These are the top 25 physicians right now overall. Over here, I'm seeing what are my total sales, new prescriptions, and refills over time. And then down here at the bottom, I actually have some additional information, which is now looking at what are my sales reps doing in their territories. How are they interacting with the HCPs? Are they sending information via email? Are they trying to reach out to them via phone call? Or are they trying to set up in person, or in this pandemic era that we're in, is it more video conferencing? But it's that informal, impersonal touches versus formal touches up at the top here. And then I can see what type of content are they talking about? Are they inviting HCPs to webinars? Are they reviewing peer-reviewed articles that are available about Astrocept with our physicians and HCPs? Are they inviting them into trade shows and so on? And so what I want to do now is I want to try to figure out what's happening in this patch. For instance, why is licorice not only our top revenue builder, which you can see by total TRX dollars as in the length of the bar, but she also has the most new prescriptions that are being written, which is the shade or the darkness of purple. And what I'm going to show you here real quick is a feature that is coming out in 2021.2, which is going to be explain data available to everyone, including viewers. And now anybody who's familiar with explain data, you've seen this icon when you either go into web edit or when you're in the desktop, but now I'm not in web edit. I am just simply viewing this data. And if I want to try to understand why is she better than everybody else, I can click on explain data and some information starts coming up. So I know that the two metrics that are being used to create that visualization are total prescription dollars and new prescription percent. If I drill in a little bit into new prescription percent, I can actually start to understand what are the relevant dimensions. So what are the things that might be explaining what's going on? And I can come in and I can see the content being delivered That's something that I'm interested in, because I want to try to see what is she doing better or differently that other people aren't doing. And what I can see is that she tends to be providing a higher amount of peer-reviewed articles than everybody else. Gray being the entire population, blue being the individual that we're assessing. So I can look at that content delivery. I can look at the content channels. And what I see is that she's doing more in-person visits than everyone else. Now, in this case, remember, we've defined in-person as both in-person and also video conferencing. So I'm getting a little bit of an idea what's separating her apart from the others. But I also want to take now a deeper dive into maybe the information that's on this screen. So I'm going to pick on Julia. So Julia is our 4th largest revenue maker in this territory right now. And I also happen to know Julia. I know she's a great sales rep and she's always open to change. And we're going to look in her patch. And what I see here right away are 2 physicians that have, by the size of the square, roughly the same revenue. So $110,000 of revenue, that AstroSep revenue that we've earned from Dr. Waldorf versus $105,000 of revenue that we've earned from Dr. DiBattista for prescriptions that they've both written for AstroSep. But there's a stark difference here. Dr. Waldorf has a 26% new prescription rate, whereas Dr. DiBattista only has a 5% rate. So let's dig into this a little bit better, a little bit more. Well, what I can see with Dr. Waldorf is that he has more email encounters than he does phone calls that are more than in person. I see that the top content that he's inviting or that he's being invited to by Julia is webinars followed by peer-reviewed articles. Okay, so let's click and let's compare that to Dr. DiBattista or Nick. And I actually see kind of the same pattern. So this as a manager who wants to reach out and talk to Julia and help her understand what she could be doing differently, I don't really have a whole lot of insight as to what I could say, because it looks like these 2 HCPs are being interacted with in very similar ways. So I kind of don't have anything to go off of there yet. It's a great description, and Tableau has always been wonderful with descriptive statistics and allowing you to see what's happened in the past, what's happening right now. And we have had some forecasting capabilities, but we've never had prescriptive capabilities. And what I'm really looking to do here is I want to help prescribe to Julia what actions she should be taking with Dr. DiBattista in order to increase the number of prescriptions to new patients that he's writing for AstroSep, thus increasing market share. I want to take a quick look in Julia's patch, also of our market share analysis, just to see if there's anything regionally that's going on or something distinctly different. So these are all of our competitor drugs. AstroSep in Julia's patch actually is the dominant drug in this clinical area that's being prescribed. So that's good to see. And it looks like she's got an uptick. So overall, Julia is doing quite well. But again, on that granular level of a single HCP, Dr. DiBattista, I'd really like to see things become better. Well, the next type of person, what I want to reach out to is to my analytics team. And I have some people that really understand where the data for the interactions that our sales reps are having with HCPs is coming from. And they also very much understand where the prescription information is coming from. For anybody who's interested in, this would typically be coming from something called Viva CRM in the pharma space. And also the prescription information would be coming from a company called IQVIA. And so we have a new bag of tricks, if you will, that we can start leveraging for the first time in Tableau. As a longtime user, what I can tell you is I've for a long time been able to create dashboards like this that could describe what was going on, but the missing piece that always seemed to be eluding dashboards was the ability to then take the information that you understand today and help drive how you move the decisions forward. And it just so happens that we have with Einstein, why did I forget the name? Einstein Analytics, the ability to take data in, create a model, and then deploy that model into Tableau so that we can leverage it to help with decisions like this. So I'm going to jump. I'm going to jump who I am right now, and now I'm going to go in and take on the role of a data analyst. Now, a data analyst, typically, they understand their data. They know where things are coming from. They're subject matter experts on the information. And here I just want to point out that not in 2021.1, but in 2020.4, we introduced the ability to edit data prep flows and create data prep flows directly from server. So I'm actually on Tableau server right now. And I'm just going to show you real quick. This is a prep flow that was created in order to get our data ready for being able to bring into Einstein Discovery so that we could create a model. And anybody who has been in prep before, this is going to look exactly like it does in Tableau Prep Builder on desktop. The reason why it looks exactly alike is because the parity of Tableau Prep from the server is identical to Tableau Desktop. It's because it was built with a much newer code set than the original Tableau Desktop, and we intended to be able to have live web editing all along. So I've got my outputs here, and anybody who is familiar with Tableau, right now, in order to get data into Einstein, we need to kick it out as a text file and bring in. In the coming months, however, one of the nodes that you're going to see as an output, at least for what we're hearing, I don't know the exact timing, is actually going to be the ability to send data from Tableau Prep directly into Einstein Discovery. But here we're going to run this flow, and basically what I'm doing is I'm looking at interactions over time, and I'm looking at the most recent interactions as compared to interactions in the last 2 months versus interactions in the last 6 months. And the granularity is the information at every HCP. And so now what we're going to do, that we have our data ready, we're going to go log into our Salesforce account. And for those of you who have never seen Salesforce before, this is kind of the landing page. And up here, we have our application window. And where we're going to go is actually something called Analytics Studio. Now, Analytics Studio is actually where Einstein Discovery lives. Here, it's a new interface. I can tell you that once you start navigating through it, there are lots of things that start making a whole lot of sense, and it's a pretty it's a pretty easy learn to figure out where to go. In this case, we're going to go into my prescription analysis app. What an application is inside of Analytics Studio is actually think of it as kind of a folder where you keep related information. Here is actually our RX model data that we've imported. And just to show you what that data looks like, I can come here and let you see kind of the fields. And if you were looking at some of the data that I clicked on when we were looking at the prep flow, you would have seen that these are the same fields. This is actually that CSV file that we've imported. And now that we have the data in, what we want to do is we want to create a story. Now, what a story is in Einstein Discovery it's basically you're now going to answer a question. So in this case, what we want to do is I want to maximize my market share. You can give the story a name. We're just going to let it run. We're going to put it back into that application. So we want the results to show back up in that application. And then it's basically a click through menu prompt. The next thing that I'm asked is, do I want only insights, which is going to provide what are all the things that are correlating to increasing market share? Or do I want insights and predictions? In this case, I do want both insights and predictions. And then the next step, we can either allow Einstein to go through and look across my data and decide what are the pertinent fields that should be included in the analysis, or I can manually go in and decide what fields that I want the model to be based off of. In this case, we're going to let Einstein decide. And then what it does is basically goes and creates a story. Now, for the sake of this demo, we're not going to wait for this to finish, but this whole process takes anywhere from about 2 to about 6 minutes. So it's not a highly time-intensive process. But what I'm going to do is jump back into my prescription analytics application, and I want to go look at a story that's been generated. So we're going to click here and we're going to jump into the story. And right away, what a story you'll start to see is it starts telling you tons of information associated with increasing market share. So I can see over here on the left-hand side that my in-person and video conference visits is most highly correlated to increasing market share. The second most correlated is peer-reviewed literature being offered. Over here on the right, I start to see some different combinations of information that show significant differences from the general population. So in this case, offering in-person video having in-person or video conference visits, when you had 14 to 34 of them, you had significantly higher market share than when you had 3 to 9. Which kind of makes sense. Touch points and in-person touch points always seem to be better than just blasting out emails. But then we get into some more sophisticated kind of reasoning and some things that are being detected by the model that you wouldn't normally as a human being be able to figure out. Here is looking at, of these different blocks, 3 to 9 visits, 10 to 13 visits, 14 to 34 visits. It's saying that in the case of the 14 to 34 visits, when you offered peer-reviewed literature versus not offering peer-reviewed literature, you had a better outcome. You had higher market share. And this goes on and on and on. There's tons of analysis that you can go through. And basically here what you're doing is you're making sure that what story Einstein is telling you makes sense. Another way to understand how to make sense of it is we can come into where there's some predictions. And so I can start doing a what if analysis. So things that are actionable, I can actually increase or decrease the number of visits that are occurring. And maybe I want to see when I have those visits, what happens when I'm always offering peer-reviewed literature. And you can kind of go through these different scenarios and see a ton of different information that is being explained through the model of what the expected outcome would be. Now let's take it a step further. We now want to find out how comfortable we are with the model that's being generated. So we can see what the R-squared values are for anybody who's a statistician. You know that this is a fairly low R-squared value. So you might want to figure out what are the things that you could do to improve the performance of the model. But there are some sanity checks that are done by Einstein to make sure that the model that's being created is plausible. You can see kind of the distribution of the outcome variables that are going to see. And for anybody who is a data scientist or a statistician, and you simply want to know more about Tableau, about Einstein and the model that's being generated, you can copy your R code directly from here and go do a further analysis. So now, and also if you happen to want to understand how the model was created, in this case, the algorithm that was used was GLM. We also have GBX, XGBoost, and Random Forest available, or you can have a model tournament run by Einstein, which what Einstein will do is it will go create a story, if you will, or an analysis for all of these algorithms, and then pick the best one. So what I want you to see here is that we haven't written a bit of code, but we're also not hiding things. It's very transparent what's going on inside of Einstein Discovery, and you can see a whole lot and understand what's going on. This is the story. I can't use this anywhere yet, but now that I'm ready, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy my model. Now, deploying a model is a seven-step process that's very similar to creating a story. You can go through and you can deploy as a new prediction. You can actually add this model to a model that's already exists. You can go, and if you are using Salesforce, you can actually push this out to an object, a Salesforce object. For anybody who is on the call who's familiar with Salesforce, you can interact and push these out, or we can make it so that it's deployed without connecting to a model, because in this case, we're going to use it inside of Tableau. If you want to have an additional analysis where you understand there's some populations that you might want to introduce some segmentation, you can. If you want to make sure that, so if you want to be able to see which variables are available that can be changed, you can come through here and you can check, how to change. So for instance, like the most recent channel, is probably not something you can't change. That's already happened, but it's information that's good to understand. But by unchecking that, that means that won't be up as a variable that you can change or interact with as a what if scenario. If you want to change the text that you see, so when you're offering a conference, you can either use the default text or you can put in a custom text and you can start typing out. When conference offered is saying increased value, you can actually go and say, offer more conferences here, instead of it just seeing conference offered increased value. So you can start customizing it to make it more, have more sense to the people who are interacting with it. And then basically, I'm going to uncheck that. You answer a couple more things, and then your model gets deployed. Now, model deployment takes very little time, and it's done. Now, what does that mean? What just happened? So we brought some data in, we created a story, we went and looked at the story. It makes sense to what we're saying. We think it has some application that we're going to be able to use and make sense of, and then we deployed it. And what that deployed means, I'm going to come back to Tableau now, and we're going to talk about what deployed means. So I'm going to jump into my TCRM modeling dashboard. And what we see here is just a sheet of all of Julia Dunbar's HCPs that she calls on. And I'm going to come into Web Edit here. And what I'd like to do is I want to add an extension. And the extension that I'd like to add, now it already had pre-canned, I typed in Einstein before, but you can search and it comes up, EI brings up Einstein Discovery. And just like we saw in Paul's demo, it's going to go and load the extension. And then we're going to have a configuration window that opens up. Whoops. I think I just closed it accidentally. Sorry about that. Where is my... Sorry, guys. I tried to shed a window that was coming up from Zoom so I could see what was going on. And let's try this again. Okay. And it's a demonstration. So if things went perfectly, it wouldn't be right. So here we actually get a couple of questions. So the first thing is, this is a list. So within the Salesforce area or the org that I was within, these are all of the different models that have been created and deployed. In this case, what we want to choose is the maximum market share at the 6-month review. And then I have a choice to either decide, should I run it by via a sheet or via parameters? In this case, we're going to run it by a sheet, and it's this sheet here that we're going to use. And because it's in this dashboard, there is only one object that's been brought into the dashboard, which is called our modeled data set, which is this information. The next step that you're going to see is that Tableau is going to reach out and try to take all the modeled fields and map them to the fields that are within the worksheet. Now, conveniently, for the sake of this demo, I've gone and renamed all the fields so it automatically and automagically maps. But what you'd normally see is, of the remaining fields, I see that the field in the model is called number of emails, 6 months. I see that I have a number of emails in 6 months. You just select that. And then once everything's mapped, you go on to the next step where you're asked a series of questions. So I want to add, because the number being returned is a %, I'm okay with an average. 3 predictions is fine. 3 improvements. The performance threshold is fine. So we're going to sit done. What's happening right now is all of the records that are in this field just got passed from Tableau through the Einstein extension back to Einstein Analytics, ran it through the model, and then returned back the results into this pane. Now, this is interesting. It's saying that Julia's overall, actually, this is for everybody. This isn't for just Julia. The overall predicted market share across all HCPs is 28%. Here's some top predictors. Here's how to improve it. That doesn't really help me. But now, if we go back and we look at Julia again, and we look at Julia's patch. Now, we're going to jump into kind of a dashboard that's a mix of all the things that you guys have seen before. And here what we're seeing is, and let me go to, we'll just stay here. What we're seeing here now is, this is Julia's territory. This is her market share. Now we have Einstein Analytics being brought right into the view, and I have a list of her HCPs. Now, what you'll notice is that there is a current actual market share in Dr. D. Potato's patch, but then there's a black line out here that's giving you what the predicted market share is. Now, if you remember, one of the ways that Paul showed you that you can interact with a model is to actually bring that model into a table calculation. So what we've done here is we've brought that Einstein model into a table calculation so that we can actually see the actual versus the predicted model. Value of market share. Now, when I interact with the screen, what it does is I am passing some information into another worksheet that is now set up to pass parameters into Tableau that are set up with this Einstein interaction. And this is the Einstein dashboard extension that's being used to come back and show these improvements. And what we see is, for Nick DiPotato, What Julia needs to do is cut down on the frequency of interactions and make sure that when she does interact, it's not via email. Okay, well, let's look and see for Dr. Wine. And what we'll see here is that there's 3 different interactions that Einstein is prescribing for Julia to do the next time that she interacts with this HCP, which is invite the physician to more trade shows, increase the frequency of interaction, and again, send fewer emails. What about for this physician, the next time that Julia goes and sees? And here we have 4 different a different set of actions that Julia should take in order to help improve that 6.3% market share to 25%. And so now what we're doing is getting down to a point where the interactions that Julia should be taking are actually being prescribed by the model. Now let's say that Julia is ready and she's ready to take a trip to go see Dr. DiPotato. You know, this is a functionality that's been a part of Tableau all along, but we also can pass some information out and come right into Google Maps. And for instance, I have home set to be in New York City at Salesforce Tower. And if I were at the New York Salesforce Tower, it would take about 16 minutes to get to Dr. DiPotato. But finally, what I want to show you is the last way that you can interact with data coming from Einstein, which is the kind of bulk scoring that you can do within Tableau Prep. Now, I'm not going to show you how it's done in Tableau Prep, but what we're seeing here is for all of Julia's territory, these are all of the physicians that she can interact with. The bars, solid bars, are the actual current percent prescription rate, or I'm sorry, the market share. The bar is the predicted market share, and then the gray is kind of the gap. And if Julia were able to interact with just all of her HCPs in the way that the model is showing, and the model was 100% right, so which they never are, but Julia has a potential of increasing her revenue by $520,000 just in her patch by following the suggestions of the model. Now, if I wanted to look at all HCPs across this entire data set, which is a couple 100,000 records, if I were to use the table calculation, understandably so, it might take some time for Tableau to pass all of that information up to Einstein Discovery and then pull it back down. However, because I've already used Tableau Prep to do the bulk scoring and provide that information back as a field within the data set that this view is built off of, this is how quickly I can bring in all of our physicians. And I can now see that the total potential gain by following this model that we've created for improving market share it's nearly $10 million. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here and ask some questions. Thank you, guys. Can the model output to Python be right now? No, it's only R. Squared from the model and Tableau. I don't. So the second question is, can the R squared from the model and Tableau or be viewed in the workbook? I'm not aware of how you would do that, but it is certainly something that I can take a look into. I don't think it is, because the only thing that's being shared through the extension right at the moment is the actual model itself, not the description within the story.
Yeah, and Geoff, I used Jody as a proxy because I couldn't ask directly. But
Okay.
I had posted that because that would be an interesting one to see directly in the workbook to know how much I should trust this, suggestion, right?
Well, and I think the argument to that would be is who the folks that are creating these, that are out creating the models and stuff, you shouldn't do that in a vacuum. If I'm an analyst and I'm going to go create a model in this scenario, my sales manager asked me to go figure out what could be done to help sales reps. And I come back and I explain, hey, I've got a model. It's something that's better than nothing. However, right now it has an R-squared value of 11, which means it's only an 11% likelihood that it's the model that would drive the change versus chance. Is that okay? And what's really interesting is I've had several conversations. Being in pharma for a while, I actually have quite a few friends who have gone on and are still in the industry. And I've reached out to them and I've had conversations about this. And one of my friends who is at BMS, his name's Chris O'Donovan. He actually builds a lot of models right now, looking at a ton of different scenarios. He mostly focuses on mergers and acquisitions, but from time to time he does get into different scenarios similar to this. And he said, you know what? There's times where just having 11% chance, it's a direction. It's something to follow to see if it works or not. And the beauty of Einstein Discovery is that once you've created a model, you can always go back and retrain it. In fact, within Einstein, the longer that a model exists, it'll come remind those people that, hey, the data that this was trained from is getting stale. You should go retrain it and see what's changed. And you can also bring in new data sets and compare model A to model B. So there's a lot of things that you can do in order to, it's the main message here is this isn't about a whiz bang overnight, completely changing the way that business is done. And suddenly you go from $100 million business to $100 billion business. What this is all about is incremental change that can be driven by the business for the business.
Well said. I don't see any other questions out there. Anyone else got another one for Geoff while we still got him?
Yeah, and if you have other questions that even want to go back to what Paul covered, we're both still here. So
Eric as well.
And Eric's on too. So
we've got a few minutes left. If people have got a random one, Q&A is still open. What I'll do while we're waiting perhaps for a follow-up question is quickly share my screen. Yeah, that's fine. And just before we get to perhaps a last question, I will, since I have the opportunity now, I'll just say thanks to everyone for coming. Our next meeting, not confirmed on the date and time exactly just yet, but it looks like it's going to be September 9th. And again, not confirmed, but it looks like we're going to have two, not one, but two Tableau Zen Masters at the meeting, including an Iron Viz champion. So it's going to be a very exciting meeting. Once I have those details confirmed, I will, of course, update the LinkedIn and send out notices and such. But that proves that should be almost as good as listening to Geoff and Paul and Eric for sure. We'll do the best we can, but that should be a fun meeting. I don't see anything else coming through just yet. So with that, I would like to thank Eric, who's on mute and looks like he was trying to say something, but thank Eric for coming and presenting all the way from Nashville, and Geoff and Paul as well. Appreciate your time. Appreciate the sessions. We got some, comments here and there from people and offline as well about how good the content is. So thank you very much for presenting and for joining us. And happy Thursday. It's Thursday, right? Yeah. Happy Thursday, everybody.
Thanks.
All right. Well, we'll see you online, and we'll see you at the next quarter, everybody. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
thanks, everyone.